entirely on Navajo. All Navajo, but it's the whole gamut of art again, showing the extensive talent from the Navajo. And Lois's writing, I think, is even better than
You
Beyond
did the writing,
Yeah.
all of it? Great. Did you do the writing on Beyond? Well,
Somebody was talking.
I, of course, had no idea I was coming out here today.
Is that right?
Never get out
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that wasn't nothing, I'm sorry.
Attention.
I got everybody's attention though. My name is Steve Fabiani. My wife Janet and I would like to welcome you to our gallery and thank you for coming. This is the first of 3 lectures that we're going to have this fall. The main theme of all the lectures this fall is the art of the Navajo, and it is inspired by the just incredible book, Enduring Traditions, by Lois and Jerry Jacka. This weekend we're proud to have 4 people with us. Lois and Jerry Jacka, our featured artists Peter Ray James, and Gene Waddell. Janet and I have been very fortunate to spend some time with these folks the last couple of days. We've appreciated and loved their work, especially Lois and Jerry's and Peter's, for a long time. But having a chance to talk with them, share some insights, share some time with them, has just deepened our appreciation of them as well as what they do. The first scheduled speakers are Lois and Jerry Jacka. They're going to take you through their 35-year career of starting to what it takes to put a video on, to what it takes to do a book or how it developed. It's really an excellent voyage they're going to take you on. But when you think about Lois and Jerry, what can you say? Their accomplishments in our industry has been well documented. They're a forerunner. Their print is on almost everything photogenic and written in some major issues of Arizona Highways as far as their 2 books. We have just enjoyed being with them, and I hope they have with us. They're compassionate of what they do. They're professional, and above all, they are so down to earth. Jerry was kidding as I was treating him like a celebrity. Well, Jerry, to us, you are. Lois, you are. They are going to introduce Peter Ray James, our featured artist. Janet and I met Peter a couple of years ago and just fell in love with his work. Had time to talk with him, and he just made the work blossom in front of us. Peter's going to also take you on a voyage. He's going to take you from the creation emergence story to some spiritual and traditional beliefs up into his artwork today. And you're lucky, it's just going to be a wonderful time. I hope you're going to enjoy it. After Peter finishes with his talk, we're going to bring Lois, Jerry, and Peter together for any questions and answers that you might have. And finally we have, and not least, we have Gene Waddell. This is Gene's 3rd appearance with us. He's becoming a pretty good buddy, and we couldn't have put this on without him. He's an intricate part of many, many shows that we do. He has brought a tremendous amount of jewelry with us, many of which are in Lois and Jerry's both of their books. So without further delay, I am proud to introduce Lois and Jerry Jacka.
Thank you, folks. It's great to be here. We send our greetings from sunny Arizona, Phoenix, to you. I have to tell everybody that we've been enjoying the fall color here. It's just wonderful. It's been fun to be here. We got out Friday morning and drove around the farms in the countryside, and people say, well, in Phoenix you don't have any seasons, but we had fall last week. We dropped from 102 to 98. Temperature fell, and so we had fall in Phoenix. Yeah. And we are glad to be here. We are grateful to Steve and Jan for having us. They have made us feel like celebrities, and that's wonderful. We've had a great time. It's nice to meet a lot of you here. Lois refers to this little presentation we're going to give as our frickin' frack routine. We in the past have gotten, we can't be very scholarly, but as scholarly as we get, and we show slides of Indian art, and I'm sure you'd like to see that, but it's all in the book, so we'd rather you buy the book This time we're going to answer questions that are so often asked of us, and that is, how did you guys ever get into this business, and how do you go about doing a book or putting a project together, whether it's a story for Arizona Highways or whatever. These are long stories. We're going to try to make them short if we can, so that we have plenty of time to hear Peter Ray James, because he has some great things to tell us.
Well, to begin with, it's a long time ago, but we were both raised on neighboring ranches north of Phoenix. Our folks homesteaded there. Jerry's, in fact, came from the Chicago area to begin with.
Yeah, my folks came here to Phoenix in 1929 and left the family behind. My mom both. In fact, I have a cousin in the back here who's visiting me, and had some earlier. Came out to Phoenix in 1929, settled in a desert area called New River, about 35 miles north of Phoenix, 40 miles, an hour and a half to 2 hours by a dirt road. Then they settled in a tent, and they homesteaded 640 acres. My mom tells a story those of you who are around here in Chicago and live in the city can appreciate. She came out as more or less kind of a city girl, although at that time Chicago wasn't as big as it is now, but a hard-working gal, but still used to some conveniences. And Dad put her in a tent out there in the desert, and she tells the story about my dad going to town. They had to try to earn a living. They weren't raising any cattle or anything, and was working in some kind of a little job, and one of our summer rainstorms came along, which can be very fierce in the desert, and they were camped along the what's normally dry riverbed of New River. Well, New River decided not to be dry that time, and the water came down, and it boils very muddy water when you can hear the boulders roaring. And I know the site where the tent was pitched, very close to the bank of the river. Started pouring rain, then the wind came up and started to blow her tent down. And she says she just sat there holding onto this pole squalling, wondering why she ever left Chicago. Dad was gone, but she's 88 now, and she still lives on the same property.
She won't even come visit Chicago now.
Yeah.
Well, my folks came from Texas in a covered wagon, my grandparents, to Phoenix. Had a blacksmith shop on Central and Van Buren. If any of you have been to Phoenix, right downtown, Jerry keeps wishing we'd had sense enough to still have the land. Unfortunately, we weren't that smart. When the Depression came along, they couldn't even make a living in a blacksmith shop, so they headed into the hills in a wagon up to this New River area and trapped for a living, and actually made their living that way during the Depression. But my parents fell in love with the area, and so they too homesteaded about 5 or 6 miles from Jerry's parents. And we went to first grade together in a one-room school with about 13 students. We decided we're a little like dinosaurs in this day and age. We've been married 41 years now. And anybody that's known each other that long and still stays married, something's got to be wrong with them. But I was a little like Topsy. I just rode. You know, we were just free. It was a free area. We were gone on foot or horseback one. My parents never worried about where I was or when I was coming back. They knew I'd come back sooner or later. Always did, whether they wanted me to or not. But most of our time, and Jerry's too, was spent out wandering through Indian ruins, picking up arrowheads, this type of thing.
Country was just covered, it still is, with prehistoric Indian sites.
And this was really our first start of our love affair with Indian art. We didn't know it at the time, but that's exactly what it was. And we didn't know how much it was going to influence us throughout the rest of our life and our careers. Jerry always says we courted on horseback, and I said, boy, does that age us. But we did, and we're married at the ripe old age of 18. We had a son a couple of years later, and when he was 6 weeks old, we made our first trip up to the Hopi and Navajo reservations. Camping out, those roads were all dirt at that time too, so it was quite an experience. But it was another instant love affair. We've been going back ever since. 2 years later, we had a daughter. And those poor kids, they thought all roads led to a reservation and that all vacations were spent doing photography because that's all they knew, all they saw. But in thinking back on it, they were very fortunate because they have some memories that very few children can share about all the time spent there, going down into the kivas with our Hopi friends to ceremonies, unbelievable things that very few people ever get to experience, much less as children.
I got interested in photography in high school just as a an easy credit and some cute girls in the class, and I didn't
I
realize.
must have been in there.
But I didn't realize I was going to get hooked, but I really did get hooked. And I had a great high school teacher who loaned me a camera in the summers and gave me the keys to the high school darkroom. And so I was real fortunate. So you see, I really didn't want to get married. You know, it wasn't my idea.
You believe that?
But I said, Lois, we can't get married because I don't have a job. So she got off the Help Wanted pages and found this outfit that said Help Wanted, photographer, no experience necessary.
I said, that's you.
It turned out it was a man from Chicago who had moved to Phoenix for health reasons and had a little portrait business in the Chicago area and re-established it in Phoenix. So I went to work taking, of all things, photographs of babies. Now, I was an only child, and babies frightened me.
He didn't know one end or the other.
But I had to learn how to, you know, kitschy coo and all that stuff and make the kids smile. And that's where I really got into professional photography. But shortly thereafter, I went into law enforcement. And then I got, very soon I got into forensic photography. And so spent most of my career in law enforcement doing forensic photography. I studied at the Los Angeles Police Department, attended a number of FBI training classes, became established as an expert in ballistics and fingerprints and all kinds of comparative analysis of crime scene evidence. So it was a training period for me that I didn't realize I would use later, developing skills in photography that really zeroed in on capturing detail at minute quality, lighting, and just using the proper equipment so that I could make court presentations showing the details that would bring forth the evidence that I felt that I had. But all the time I worked in this law enforcement area, as Lois said, it seemed like all roads led to an Indian reservation and all vacations were with the camera. We would spend all our spare time traveling around the Southwest. I was taking pictures, hoping clear back to when I was in high school that someday I would get one photograph published in Arizona Highways. But boy, if I could just get one photograph. In fact, when I was in high school, my dad helped me take a picture that I thought Arizona Highways could not resist. He usually kept a rattlesnake or two around. Carol, you can attest to that. Yeah. He always kept a rattlesnake or two in a cage to show friends. And so Dad got the rattlesnake out on a stick with a rope for me and put it on an old bleached out cow skull. And I was on a stepladder with a camera I borrowed from high school and took a photograph of it and took that thing down to Arizona Highways thinking they just can't resist that. For some reason.
Oddly enough, they like things that tourists are going to appreciate.
Yeah, the editor then, Ray Carlson, didn't really have a high opinion of my photograph, so I was dejected and disappointed. But finally in 1958, I got my first photograph published in Arizona Highways. And then between 1958 and 1974, I probably had all of 3 or 4, maybe 5 photographs published in the magazine. They were all landscape photographs. But I was very, very thankful for each one. Still in law enforcement, now I had left the sheriff's office and went to a position in the state. I went to Arizona Highways in 1973 with an idea. And by that time, Lois and I were thoroughly hooked on Indian art. We had started a meager collection of what you could afford on a sheriff's office salary, although I was moonlighting, taking wedding pictures on the side. So any profit I made there would usually buy a Kachina doll or help us buy a rug if we were on a trip or something.
He said a meager collection, but for a while there I thought those Kachinas were reproducing at night while we slept. It was growing awfully fast.
I'd never show her the money I made on the wedding stuff. I'd stick that aside so I could add a piece now and then.
He also told me it was an investment, but I said I'd have been starving to death and he wouldn't have sold a piece.
Anything that works, you know. But anyway, I went to Highways with this idea that there is so much beauty in the art of the prehistoric pottery of the Southwest, the first artists that lived in this country of ours. And they painted these beautiful vessels, and it was an art that was from the soul and just really had a special meaning to us. And we said, gee, you know, maybe Highways would do a little story on that. So I went to Joe Stacy, who was then the editor, and still pretty much a fledgling. And Joe kind of liked the idea. And so he encouraged me to pursue it a little bit, do some photography. He got with a couple of archaeologists at the various universities who could write a little text and said, go ahead and see what you can do. So I did start photographing these wonderful old vessels around the state. I'd take the photographs into Joe occasionally. Joe was very critical in a very rough kind of a way, but deep underneath him all he was a teddy bear. And he'd never compliment me. In fact, he'd usually tell me what was wrong with the photograph, but he'd also tell me how to improve it. So I try to listen and go back and improve my skills. And the upshot of the whole thing was just more than I could imagine. It turned out the entire issue of Arizona Highways, February 1974, was devoted to my work, with the exception of one tiny little story in there. All 4 covers were my photographs plus the content of it. And I was absolutely on cloud 9. I almost had a wreck going from the Arizona Highways office back to my office that day, just looking more at the magazine than at the road. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They had done this for me and done this at my work. That seemed to lead, Joe always made the comment to a lot of people, as he did to me. Joe Stacy said, I'll put you on stage, being through Arizona Highways, it's up to you to perform. Joe also never complimented me that I remember as to being a good photographer, but Joe always complimented me on my attitude, so I assume he meant that I was willing to work hard to get the job done. And he must have liked the photographs a little bit because he used quite a few of them. But anyway, then he asked if I was interested in doing a story on baskets. They were going to do a story on Indian baskets, which I did. That turned out to be a full issue. And then we started getting calls from publishers who they saw my work in Arizona Highways and said, gee, would you be interested in doing thus or so? Graphic Arts Center in Portland, Oregon contacted me and wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing a book on Indian jewelry, and I did, and then on pottery. Well, through all of this, I had to finally make a decision. Now I am in my late 30s, and I have to decide what I'm going to do when I grow up. I've got a law enforcement career, yet I'm really, my job's interfering with what I really want to do. So we took the leap, Lois and I say we because Lois was with me through all of this, helping me with the photography, not technically with the camera, but keeping me organized, making notes on things that I was doing, traveling with me all of these places. And we had to make a decision. We had 2 kids in school. I was getting a nice paycheck and all these little fringe benefits and a retirement program down here, and we just kissed it all off and said we're going to give it a try and get into this photography game full time. And we did. I resigned from the law enforcement career, and then that just kept growing, and things really worked out for us.
Well, as Jerry said, I was spending time traveling with him. We started so young that our kids were out of the nest young. By the time we were in our early 40s, we were pretty free to go wherever. So I started traveling around with him. And while he was shooting the art, I got to talk to the artists. And that was much more enjoyable as far as I was concerned. And we had a ball, and we got to know we had so many friends among them in the first place, and they began to really open up and to tell me these very interesting stories. But as Jerry likes to say, I was a closet writer.
Yeah,
no one ever saw
She
anything I wrote.
great poetry, and I would find these poems stuck here and there, and she'd be embarrassed. In fact, I'd kind of get in trouble if I read one of her
Poetry's
poems.
too personal.
Well, but it was beautiful. She had this talent and did nothing with it.
But one day, James Little, a Navajo jeweler, came to see us. He'd been a friend for years, and he came for help with a brochure. So Jerry was taking the photographs for him, and I said, I can write a brochure. That much, about a great artist. Well, 10 pages later, Jerry walked in and read it and said, well, it's great, but it's not a brochure, it's an article. So he convinced me it should be sent to Southwest Art magazine. We sent it, and they published it, and I had to come out of the closet at that point. And at this time, we had also been talking to Arizona Highways about doing an article on contemporary Indian art, because what we had seen lately had just begun to blow our minds of what they were doing. And we thought, most of the people in the world have no idea what Indian art is becoming. So finally, after about a year, they agreed. I think they thought it was their idea by that time, so it was okay. So we started work on that. It took about a year and a half, I think, that we worked on it.
Just like doing a book, actually.
And when it came out, again, it was a full issue. So we were thrilled with that. And while we were working on it, everybody kept saying, you should do a book. Well, we seldom do what we're told, but this was one instance we did, and worked on it for another year or so, and came out with Beyond Tradition. And to our amazement, it won several awards, including the Wrangler Award from the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
We don't ever do anything planned or preconceived, it seems like. I mean, we just kind of evolved into things that we do, just the way life happens. We have a strong belief that God is guiding us along the way, and if we just take the pointers and follow them, it's going to get done.
Somebody has to. We never had sense enough to plan anything ourselves.
So as we did the book, we went on a book signing tours like we're doing right now. And I must confess, I was a little more ambitious a few years ago when we did Beyond Tradition than I am now. At that point, I put together a 3-projector program with 3 slides, dissolve unit, music, and the whole schmaltzy bit. And it takes a lot.
And this is what you get today.
Yeah, this
Sorry
is what you get today. Sorry about that. Anyway, that was a big job, and I just ran out of steam this time. But we put this thing together, and we're lugging all this equipment all around, and we're doing these programs. But what happened is people started seeing it and saying, well, gee, there's a lot of neat information there, and it's visual, and it's pleasing, and you guys ought to produce a video. Well, we didn't know. We had the foggiest idea how to go about producing a video, but we said, gee, you know, we're getting a lot of input, and maybe we should look into this. So I started doing the research into the technical aspect of it. What is it really going to take to do this? We got with some great people, and the bottom line was we produced a video based on our book Beyond Tradition. And what blew our mind again was that we won an Emmy Award on the video through the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. They have regional competition, just like the big one for the stars in Hollywood. They have regional competition, and we competed with NBC, ABC affiliates, PBS affiliates in about 5 Western states in a regional deal, and we wound up with the Emmy on it.
And all those people sat around saying, Lois and Jerry, who?
Never heard of it.
These were big guys.
Yeah, but it was very humbling that we were able to do that. So anyway, we did the video, and then in the meantime, again, this is the old evolution process for us. We were asked to do a book on David Johns, a Navajo artist. David had painted an incredible mural in Phoenix in a Greco-European office building, Greco-European style. You'd never expect to find American Indian art in this building. Polished mahogany and spiral staircases and all of that. But the owner of the building wanted to do something unusual in this huge dome that was some 4 stories above the top floor, which was a big round conference room. And this dome was 36 feet in diameter. And so through the Lavina Old Gallery in Scottsdale, they commissioned David Johns to do this mural. And the people who owned the Lavina Old Gallery were so taken with this, they said there's got to be a book done on David. David is a Navajo artist. They commissioned Lois and I to do the book. And it was during that time that Lois really got hooked on Navajo culture. David being Navajo, she spent a lot of time talking to David and his family. She started researching Navajo culture, Navajo beliefs. And
I got so involved that he about went out of his mind. I bought a Navajo tape and sat in my room trying to learn Navajo.
Oh, that was a riot.
Oh, it was
That
horrible.
was a riot, yeah. She gave up on that after a while. But it got expensive too, because she never wants to check out a book or go to the library. She wants it in her library, so she keeps coming back from these bookstores with some of these exotic books that are collector's items, and she bought, but they're great. We enjoy them all. But anyway, the book became a reality, and in the meantime, again, we're becoming more and more aware of the young artists that are out there. The young Native American artists who are under 30, who are in their 20s, their teens, and even some preteen, who are doing, I'm not talking about school art, we're talking about really fine art. And we said, gee, we need to let the world know about that. So we went to our old friends again at Arizona Highways and said, how about doing a story on young artists? They agreed, and we did, and that's where we really became acquainted with Peter Ray James, whose work we see here today. We didn't know about Peter when we did Beyond Tradition, or he would have been in Beyond Tradition, but we did become aware of him when we did the story on young artists for Arizona Highways, and also our video. We did get him in the video. So, and incidentally, I think Peter was looking for this earlier, but Peter got the cover of that Arizona Highways issue. So, and we were delighted. It couldn't have been a better choice for a cover, but he also got the frontispiece. In fact, Peter, where's Peter at? Did you slip the editor a 20 or something to get both of these in? Man, I'm telling you.
It was 21.
Anyway, that's when we became acquainted with Peter. And during that time, Peter and some of the other Navajo artists, Lois was interviewing them and talking to them. And then we're getting, our publisher now is calling the people that did Beyond Tradition and said, guys, it's time for another book. How about let's do another book? And other people were talking to us about it. Well, Lois at that point had become so involved in Navajo culture, and we became so aware that the Navajo alone has so many talented artists in all phases of art, that we felt that this is what we're led to do. We've got to do a book on Navajo art only. And that's what led to the production of Enduring Traditions.
The Navajos are the largest tribe around. There's about 200,000 of them, and I said I think 199,000 are artists. But there are very few families without a silversmith, and even fewer that don't have a weaver. Entire families are artists. Mother and father are artists of one type, and they have 8, 10, 14 children, all of whom become artists. It's just unbelievable. And as the one fellow said, Nelson Sosi said, it wasn't called art, it was called living. And he's right, that's exactly what it is, because it is strictly a part of their lifestyle. It has been for generations.
We, in working on the book Enduring Traditions or any other project we do, we approach this somewhat backwards, at least in the eyes of most publishers, and we tend to drive them up a wall. When you propose a book to a publisher or you sign your contract, they expect a really nice tight package with a bow around it that has a very specific outline and is totally well organized. We're never organized when we start. The first thing we do when we embark on a major project such as Enduring Traditions, Beyond Traditions, the major issues of the highways, and I will insert here that Lois and I do not consider ourselves experts. We love the art, we've lived it for most of our life, but we're still learning. So we get out and we get out in the field and we start contacting people who are in the know. We rely on museums, galleries, such as this gallery here, the people who are involved in Indian art on a daily basis. And we just spread the word that we're doing a book or a project, and we are now looking for the best possible talent we can find, because it's changing. We've already found artists that we wish we could have somehow included in our book Enduring Traditions. We've seen the work of some artists that we've included that's already better than what we have in there. It's a growing, vibrant art, American Indian art is. So we attend these juried shows, the major ones, the Santa Fe Indian Market, the Gallup Intertribal Ceremonial, the Heard Museum, Museum of Northern Arizona, all of these institutions in the Southwest that have these major juried shows and gallery openings. And we start photographing the best possible art that we can find. The people cooperate incredibly well with us. We were allowed at Santa Fe Indian Market to be there during the judging. We were also at Gallup Intertribal and Museum of Northern Arizona also. They gave us a side room in the Sweeney Center in Santa Fe while the judges were there. There were thousands of pieces of art in this hall being judged, and they allowed us to be there while the judging was going on and remove pieces from the tables and photograph them and put them back while they're there in this busy time. We couldn't do a project like this. We just